So Kylie, you're also on the agenda for a textbook report. Do you want to just
Yeah, I mean, I'm
bring
comfortable
that
with
up?
that.
I don't know, we have to, Marianne, do you know what page textbook report is on? First
If we,
237.
37. Okay, Kylie.
Okay. So what I have provided is a 3-year textbook adoption plan, but I also included our current school year, just kind of a review, mainly because there were a couple of changes that took place that I wanted to be able to share. So again, this report shows first the overview of what we projected and spent for this current school year. There were a couple of purchases there that were unplanned that we had not projected for, one of which was the purchase of our AP Music Theory textbooks because we had gone through the textbook process already when we realized that we were going to have enough students for that course to run. And then we also had an unexpected expense in driver's education because of the pandemic. We looked to offer a virtual session of driver's education, but needed to provide those students with a resource so that we could get those students through the class. So that's why you'll see no projected costs for those two. Another significant change to the expenditures for this year was the fact that we decided to forego the purchase of in mass of AP Physics textbooks. We happen to have a physics teacher who can write his own code, who uses resources to then create through something called WebWorks that I don't fully understand, materials that is even more relevant based on what he was able to get from the samples. So we talked and he said, I can make what I'm going to use for the kids. We don't need to buy all these books.
in a science class, it's a double-edged sword because you want a resource, but many times by the time the book is published,
Right.
that is out of date.
Right, and when Mark does something with WebWorks, he can tweak it because he's writing
Right
the
there,
actual.
right.
Do you have Mr. Shadell?
No, we had him in Mr. Weiss last year, but we did web work as well.
Yes.
And I really liked it.
Yes, so that's why we ended up not going with that AP text that we had originally been planning to go with. When you look at the rest of that first page, year one of the 3-year plan, that represents the textbooks that we are asking for to be purchased in July once the new fiscal year hits for next school year. And as you can see, we're asking for resources for AP Chemistry, for our Auto 1 and Advanced Auto class. That's the same book, but different classes that it serves. Our Honors English 10 course and our health course. There was a question about whether these resources were licenses or textbooks, and I tried to indicate that. So when you look at AP Chemistry, I put textbook in parentheses because that's different than, for example, the auto where we're getting a license and textbook bundle. The interesting thing here, when I first came to RB, we were newly into the one-to-one initiative, and we wanted everything to be an online book. We wanted it to be online book, and we wanted it to be interactive, and that was where we wanted to go. And so we went down that path in some of our courses, and we found some interesting things along the way, like when you buy licenses to a textbook, you are paying significantly more money and you have to keep re-upping them. Whatever arbitrary year the publisher decides we're going to give you these licenses for 3 years, so then you end up spending additional monies over a period of time that we may not have needed a new resource in 3 years of a particular text. So it's really course dependent, and we've tried to allow some autonomy within the specific courses with regard to what that looks like. An AP Chemistry book is an AP Chemistry book. It's a book. It's very expensive. It's one of those things that you need the resource. That was another question, what is the lifespan of a book is that? College Board actually says that the lifespan of a textbook for an AP class is 10 years. So with the fact that we were using our AP Chemistry book for 17, we needed to get a new resource going there. For something like autos, it made sense for David to request a license because that's something that you can do on the computer and you can be working and have something right there. It's not paper. So I am not pushing the way that I had before that this needs to be an online textbook. Another reason is we're finding out Computer literacy in terms of reading a textbook online is a whole other thing for kids to learn how to do. To interact with the textbook, to figure out what that, how that functions. And sometimes what I have found for some of our learners specifically, that can be a barrier to accessing the material. And so we really want that to be a decision that we allow courses to naturally make instead of forcing kids just because we have the Chromebooks to say it has to be a book that's online. I am a person who understands that very well because I'm not going to read something off a computer. I'm always going to print it and have it in front of me. So that's why I tried to make the delineation there about whether or not it was a textbook or a license. So there were additional questions. The AP Chemistry book, again, the life of that book should be a 10-year process. Another question was...
So a quick question back actually on the AP Chemistry. That estimate number, I wasn't quite following. That is the estimated enrollment in AP Chemistry in any given year? So you need 40 of those textbooks?
Yes, so we have, for example, right now, I believe we have 38 students that are...
We've
I
got
have
a
it right here.
classroom set, or we've got, is it?
So because they could be running they could in theory run in different periods if someone different taught them, or because we want the students to potentially be able to take the resource home. In this case, since it was so few to be able to give each student a resource, and because AP Chemistry, if I'm being honest, is a really, really challenging course that kids might want to take a book and be able to work on it at home, we went with being able to give one to each student. 35. So we don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're ever short and having to scramble at the last minute. Sometimes they get damaged, things of that nature. There was a question also about the Honors 10 book, asking if this was a new book for students. English 10 has typically been a course ever since I got here and well before that has relied on supplemental readings. I'm a person that understands that as a former high school English teacher, but the English department wanted to go in a direction of supporting the growth of a student toward AP, and so they wanted to go with a pre-AP textbook to anchor that a little bit more in the skills and the foundational knowledge that you need to be able to prepare yourself for AP language and then AP literature. So this is a new request for them. And then there was also a question about the cost of the previous health book. That significantly predates me. I believe it was a decade old. I don't know how much that was. I looked for it, and I can tell you how much that health book, that 10-year-old health book is now if I wanted to buy it on Amazon, but I don't know what it was initially. I do know that the health textbook, in comparison to kind of the other textbooks that we're looking at, especially the AP Chemistry book, is and that's a fairly low cost for a hardback cover resource there. The fluctuations on something like what I'm requesting for next year sometimes can come in shipping cost, sometimes can come in additional discounts, but typically we're not over that amount.
So year one is kind of worst case scenario.
Yes.
Year 2 and 3, you're just laying out right now for the board of things you know
Yes.
for sure.
And there was a question about historic spending and budgeting for textbooks. So I just went through and pulled all of the requests that I have personally done. So that dates back to the request for the 16-17 school year. So in 16-17, we were looking at a $38,000 request. I'm rounding. In 17-18, we looked at a $59,000 request. In 18-19, we looked at a $79,000 request. 19-20 was a rough year because we re-upped our Carnegie math curriculum 5-year agreement. So 19-20 was $144,000. And then that brings us to this year, and we're looking at $43,000 and some change. So in the span of the last 6 years, it's a relatively low request if you kind of average that out. We're looking at kind of a 6-year average of $60,000 around there, what we're typically looking at in textbooks.
I would say that you want to start focusing on year 2 and 3.
Yes.
So the board understands the history of giving you this report is so that we know kind of 3 years out as we're doing these budgets, especially back in, if we start to relive some of the deficit stuff that we had to go through after the 2008 recession, this just gives the board an idea of where what necessary academic resources need to be purchased.
And the year 2 and 3 of plan, those again, our estimates at this point. I made a note under AP statistics. That will be a purchasing decision that would be dictated by College Board. They're in the process of figuring out if they're going to make some changes that would require a new text. So that is something we would be kind of pausing on to see where they guide us. And then AP World History and AP Human Geography are courses that Dr. Freitas would like to begin running. So we would need to, if we're able to run those courses, we would need to get resources for that. So I put them on here so we weren't in a position like we were with AP Music Theory. So I could foresee, right, if we're able to get this course to run with enough interested students, we would be looking at needing to have that resource connected to the course.
So actually, that was my question on AP Music Theory. Obviously, it ran this year. It would theoretically run in year 2. We would not need to repurchase or be surprised by any cost for that
Correct.
class because now we have them.
Correct,
Okay.
yes, yep. And I would anticipate, if we're using the 10 year as a mark, I would anticipate us being okay for quite a while on that.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think there were any other questions submitted on textbooks.